Okay. Just gonna give it a minute here before I get going. Get all my notes properly arranged. Um, Stop that. There. And then I will also stream in this voice channel here. There you go. So in case you're not watching on Twitch, you can watch from there too. Okay. I'm gonna figure out where I'm starting from.
It's going to be on YouTube?
Yes, I'm going to export it to YouTube once we're done and everything, so you'll be able to watch it there if you end up needing to take off or anything.
If I take off, send me the title on the mail in the game.
Sure. I'll post a link in Discord. I can DM it to you in Discord as well.
Okay, that's great. That's good. If you post the link in Discord, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so Commander things. First, we're just going to go over a few tools that you have while your Commander tag is up. Over here, let's see, can I get my... There we go, Alt. Here we go, so you can kind of see my cursor a little better. Over here is your squad UI. You can resize it to whatever you want. It can be massive, it can be tiny. Once you get to be a certain size of tiny, it's only going to show the class icons.
I can't put my commander on because you're in group with me.
If you'd like, you can drop squad, and you can put your own tag up and mess around with it at the same time.
Okay.
Up here in the corner, it'll tell you the total number of people that are in the squad. The other one is a thing for world versus world. It has to do with sharing participation. Honestly, I don't really know what it's about. This here is your squad broadcast message. You can go to the entire squad or to a specific subgroup. Generally, you want to just do squad broadcast. There's also a keybind for that. In my case, it's, what is it? It's like shift enter for me or something. I don't know what it is. Anyways, but you go up there and you say bop, and it goes across the screen. And my guess is no one hears you because there's no one in squad. But it'll put it there, and it'll also put it down here in the chat, which I currently have blocked off. But yes, so the broadcast is handy to have. Go ahead.
No, I said,
okay.
I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah, it's handy. Also, if you hit this little icon up here, this little arrow, you'll get your squad menu. There's a few different things you can do here, such as editing the squad message. When you do that, you get a pop-up box like this. It can be handy if, for example, you need to have a link to somewhere. You can put it in the squad message, and then people can copy it from the squad message, which is kind of nice. Otherwise, you can put whatever you want in there, hit accept, and it will show up whenever people first join the squad. They will also have a button up here that says to view squad message. A few other things that are in here are locking it to be raid mode. You need that if you're doing raids or strikes. It's a 10-member limit. Locking all subgroups basically means what it says. They're locked. Only you as the commander can individually move people around. Default is allow members to send invites. The private squad option will make it so that your tag doesn't show up on the map for everybody else. So you can do that if you are wanting to just run around, say, with like a few friends or something like that, and you don't really want people wondering what this tag is doing running around on the map. Lastly, or almost lastly, there's this option here where you can set how uninvited players can try to join. Usually I leave mine on yes with approval, but you can set it to no, which means only you can send out invites, or you can leave it totally open, which means anyone can join. And then of course right here is all your options for your tag. If you don't view it as a grid, you'll see it like this, and I think you only see like 5 at a time. It's not great, so just view it as a grid. Okay, those are the tools in that basic UI area. Now, I do want to go over subgroups a little bit more, and this is going to be a little bit difficult because let's see. Eve, I'm inviting you to squad so I can use you. Okay, so you can make multiple subgroups by dragging and dropping someone into a group. As the commander, you can do this with anybody, including lieutenants, which I'll talk about in a minute. The way the game makes subgroups, is there a third person I can steal? Ren, are you still online? Can I steal you? You are still online. And you're not in a squad. Nice. So when I go and drag and drop Ren here over to this empty space, it's going to make a default new subgroup of 3. Just like that. Now let's say I wanted to make a subgroup of up to 5. This is something that in our guild, in Guild Wars 2 Girls, we do often for fractals. We want to have 4 subgroups for people to choose from, tiers 1, 2, 3, 4. And then usually a 5th subgroup that officers hang out in and is locked for us to talk to each other in party chat, organizing things. But that can be weird when we don't actually have enough people to make 5 subgroups. So you have to do this sort of weird stuff where I'm going to grab myself here and drag and drop. So we've got 2, 3, 4. But I'm going to do it again. Oh, fuck. I made a 1. 1, 4, 1. Yeah, that's the most you can do. You basically, the biggest you can go with your sub squads is 1 more than the total number of people you have, just with the way that it works out. So I can only make up to sub squad numbered 4 because of the way this kind of works. But you just keep dragging and dropping people until you get the number you want. It's kind of how that works. Other things about subgroups. Boons are prioritized based on subgroup, which is why, as we'll talk later about talking about strike and raid squad setups, you usually have 2 subgroups, each of 5 people, a healer per subgroup, and you have full boons covered per subgroup to cover up to 5 people. Another thing about sub squads is that you can talk in party chat among your sub squad, and it won't be shared anywhere else. As well, targeting. So if you target someone, only people in your sub squad are going to be able to see that target.
How do you target? Like a bow? How do you target?
You do Control T on an object. So select something with your mouse and then Control T.
Okay. Thank you.
That brings up another good point. That is something I hadn't written down to go over, so I'm glad you brought that up. There are different types of squad markers that you can place. So normally when it's just you, and you're in a party, and you do Alt click on a map, you get this option right here, this personal waypoint, and it goes there and it gets set down immediately. But when you're a commander, you get this additional little menu here where you can set down the personal waypoint or this squad attack order or defend order or rally order. Most often, you're going to find people using the squad attack order because it's a nice big red X. In particular, in open world commanding events, when people are doing, say, like an HP train or bounties, they'll put a squad attack marker next to where everyone should wait at the next bounty or the next HP, so everyone knows where they're going next. And then you just click it normally to get rid of it, and everyone will see that, not just your sub squad. Something else I didn't go over, this button here, I think I didn't have it because there was no one in squad. Ready check. This is something that is pretty vital for making sure that you're ready to go, particularly in raids and strikes. You want to do a ready check every time before you pull. In open world, usually for those things, it's not used as much. Sometimes it is, in particular if you're doing an HP train where you're trying to make sure everyone gets a particular HP or something. Sometimes people might use it for that, but usually those squads are so large, you end up with people who are AFK, and it's like not worth it. But if you have a small group of friends running around, it can be. So anyways,
watch over us and make sure you keep our enemies weak.
Do a ready check, and then yeah, you'll get a squad ready when everyone says accept. You'll get a yes or no usually. You'll also see on their icon a little green check mark or a little red X, depending on if they say that they are ready or not, as well as on yourself. You can also click in the corner to rapidly change your status from not ready to ready, but that doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Also, as you'll notice when I did that ready check just then, you can't see Ren or Eve's ready state. You only see mine, which, oh, I hit the little checkbox and it got rid of the ready check. It canceled it because I'm the commander. But normally you can click it and it toggles the state back and forth. But anyhow, if you're on a different map, you can't actually see what someone's ready state is. So that's kind of unfortunate, but yeah. Okay, another thing here is this menu that you get in the squad. You know, you can do things like create new subgroup. You can kick people from the squad, of course, from in there. The main thing that I wanted to demonstrate here is a point lieutenant. You can do this. Gal now has these two little down arrows next to their name in the squad UI. That has now given Ren the ability to drag and drop people from their subs. The only person that they can't move is me as the commander. It also gives Ren the ability to place markers, and I think also to place squad attack orders, those things I was just demonstrating with Alt. I'm not actually sure on that, but I think so. Lieutenants can be super handy, in particular if you are running a large group and you need help with placing markers, or you're running a group and you're not as familiar with something, but someone super is and they're happy to place markers for you. Lots of kind of good things like that, just usually for people to kind of like help you out with managing your squad. Went over that. I went over that as well. I went over that too. Okay. One last thing for squad tools. This is actually outside of the squad UI tools. I'm going to talk briefly about Arc DPS and Blish Hood, because in particular for the two different types of commanding we're going to be talking about today, which is just PvE really, because I don't have any World commanding expertise, is usually open world stuff like HP trains and metas, and yeah, raids and strikes. So Arc DPS is going to be really handy for stuff like raids and strikes. You'll be able to see the amount of damage that people are dealing in this UI here. There's also a boon table, and you can set things up to show break bar damage. All of that setup itself, I haven't necessarily gone into in detail. I do have some stuff on like in the Discord server, some screenshots of this stuff. I'll briefly mouse over some of these things and go over them, just in case, you know, people who are watching back this later haven't seen some of the screenshots, and you can pause the video at moments to take a closer look at what I'm mousing over. So Control-Shift-T is going to open your options window for Arc DPS. Area stats is that main one up here, that damage. In my case, this is how I have my display set up, this stats format. I have it showing me the target per second, and then the cleave per second in parentheses. I also do some other things like styling it by the bars by the color of the class and stuff like that. Area buffs, it's bound to Alt-Shift-B. These are your two modifiers, Alt-Shift, and then buffs under B. You want to make sure you have it set to in and to U for percent pulled. Other than that, you can kind of set it up as you desire. There's the buff list. You can take a screenshot of it or pause it if you need it. There's the other one. Sorry, what?
No.
Okay.
It's an NPC.
Oh, okay. And then I also have it so it's colored by subgroup because then it's a little bit easier to tell the boons for each one. Break bar is a little different. That one is an extra area stat. This one right here. I set mine by, you have to hit this bind button, and I bound mine to N. In the actual settings of it, you go over here and you say advanced stats and you select break bar. And that's all you got to do. So that's the ARC DPS that's good for monitoring your squad. There are additional tools like the mechanic extension, extensions. There's healing stats. Mechanics log can be really handy for checking what's going on as well. Blish HUD can be handy both for open world HP trains and for doing actual raids or even like fractals, but you're not going to be a commander in fractals. There are lots of different packs that you can download, various marker packs. They're all pretty good. Lots of them are going to have packs for specific raids and ones that are like HP train packs. Those are really nice. So if you want to lead an HP train, you get one of those packs and then you can just follow it. You don't even have to necessarily know the route. Yeah, that's those tools. Oh, markers. So I want to go ahead and go over how markers work. The squad markers are super duper helpful. The default key binding for placing one on the ground is Alt Shift and then a number between 1 and 7. So you've got 1. Oops, I didn't. Alt Shift is person marker. Sorry, it's Alt for putting it on the ground. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, there's 8. There you go. And then Alt 9 will clear all of them. It'll clear all of the ones that are on the ground. Actually, it clears just all of them because it cleared the one off my head as well. Alt Shift will place it on whatever you have selected. So I can put an arrow on Gal with Alt Shift 1, or I can put a circle on Brittany with Alt Shift 2. Alt Shift 9 will also clear all markers. If you want to place a marker on yourself, don't have anything selected. Alt Shift 1, where the fuck did it just put it? Sometimes you got to zoom in and make sure you have nothing selected. There you go.
I put them on you.
Now it's on me. So you got to zoom all the way in, have nothing selected, and then you can do that, and it'll put the object marker on yourself. Oops. Open some random code on accident. Okay. So that's markers. Let's see. I went over those tools. I went over sub-squads. So, etiquette. Before we move into Commander etiquette, any questions about Commander tools?
No.
Okay. Hi, Maggie. She's in the sidecar next to me. Alrighty. So, some general etiquette with being a commander is once the event is over, whatever you're doing, whether it's in like open world event or what have you, is you thank everyone for coming. Say, thank you for the help. Thank you all for coming. Whatever variant of that you want to do. That's usually a good thing to do. Specifically, if you had fills, like say you're running a raid or strike event, it's always good to specifically say thank you to our fills for helping us out, and then as well as just thanking everyone else. Within the context of Guild Wars 2 Girls, if you do have fills come for a run and you have any sort of voting going on for what you're going to do, like say you finish a piece of content and you're like, oh, maybe we're going to move on to this other one. What should we do, this or that? Your fills are there helping you out. So for us in our guild, like their vote will count as far as what you're going to do next, unless they personally are like, no, I'll bow out since it's a guild event. But that way it kind of reflects that we respect their time and it gives them a sense of inclusion instead of feeling like an other.
Okay.
I just pet Maggie, Ren. I know in Twitch you just requested the pet the kitty option. I pet Maggie because she's next to me. I don't know where Lancey is. He might be in his clubhouse, so I'll owe him a pet later. um, Another thing about commander etiquette, moving on to the next point. In general, it's good to have a mentality of you are there to serve while you have a commander tag. Sure, some commanders can be tyrants. They can be very like, hey, I've got the power and we're going to do whatever I want to do, and I expect you to be like doing whatever I want. That's usually not enjoyable. Also, hi, Jules. Another friend joined in Twitch chat. So, you know, whether you're commanding a raid group, running a World v World squad, or running an open world farming or meta event, you're there to lead people in your squad, and generally good leaders participate in what's called servant leadership. This is the mindset that you're there to provide a service to those people, to the people in squad, and to think of their or the group's needs in front of your own.
If I tempt your adventurer's spirit with an exciting expedition.
That was funny, just like a random NPC talk like popping in. Going along with the idea of serving those who are in your squad, it can be difficult to balance needs in the context of 10-man content. That's how I'm going to refer to raids and strikes, just faster. In the context of 10-man content, that means trying to balance expectations, putting a squad together where either everyone is on kind of the same playing field, or people are already expecting like, hey, this is a training run, this is a beginner run, or this is a more advanced run. We have a higher level of performance here in this one. Really setting up those expectations in advance can help with squad morale, as well as just people enjoying it.
I kind of had something like that. I was in can't think of the name of it now. I was in Soto, in the lower portion, and I was running events because I needed stuff in that area for scale. And so I was running events to get the stuff I needed. And I was doing commander, and I was just boom, 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 one event after another, like in a circle. And I was running a squad, and they had caught on to what I was doing. From this one to this one to this one, back again to this one, again to this one to this one, and again we start and we go in a circle, round and round and round we go again. And then I had this guy join, and when I completed the circle, I guess he didn't understand that we're going to do it again. And he says, I need help. And I always try to help people, no matter what, even when I'm in game and I'm doing my own thing or whatever. And I said, what do you need help on? He says, I need help on this Drackner achievement. And I said, well, I don't know what that is, because he didn't give me the whole name. And so he finally, after a few minutes, he gives me the full name. And one of the other girls in the group says, what's next, Commander? And I says, hold on. I says, let me see what he's talking about. I says, we're going to go to Briella next. And I says, if Briella's not up, we're going to go to Lucretia next. So she knows what we're doing. I answered her question. And I told him, I said, we're not doing that. I said, we're running an event. And I said, I can help you later after we run an event. But he said, oh, but I need it now. I said, but that's not what I'm doing. I said, I don't mind helping you. I said, but I'm running events with the squad right now. And so he didn't like that. He wanted me to stop doing what I'm doing. And she got mad and she dropped squad along with another person. And we went and continued with the events on to Briella and Lucretia. He stayed with me. The two people dropped, so I only had one other person in the squad. It was a very small squad. And then that person dropped, and I'm like, well, now I don't have the people to do the events. So I tried to help him, and it turned out I couldn't help him anyway.
Oh.
Because I didn't know what to do, because I already had it.
Oh, yeah.
And there were several parts of it. There was like 10 parts of it, and I only needed two pieces of it that he didn't need.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I can't help you on it. I'm sorry. I already have that. I says, I really don't even know what to do. I didn't even know about it.
Yeah, it can get hard to balance those things. I mean, that's a perfect example, particularly in open world commanding. People wanting to be pulled in different directions. I've seen it happen a lot on bounty trains where it's like, oh, we're doing legendary bounties, and then people start asking for champion bounties, and it becomes difficult, and you kind of have to find the balance yourself of where how lenient you're going to be. You know, some commanders are going to say, yeah, sure, I can grab a champion or two really quick. But that's going to become a slippery slope of now you're going to start getting everybody asking for you to do champions. And then you're going to have people in the group who joined expecting to do only legendaries who now are probably going to want to drop because doing regular bounties is a waste of their time. So you need to keep in mind kind of, you know, what do you want for your squad, but also how did you advertise your squad. And you know, I also want to bring up an example of HP trains because in open world people tend to fall behind or they join late and they're like, oh, can we do this one, can we go do that one. What you did there where you told the person I can help you after is a great way of handling it, because then it's saying, look, yeah, I want to keep doing what I'm doing because I told these other people that this is what's happening, but I'm still open to helping you. It just needs to be after.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a really good way of handling it. Um,
Okay.
with HP trains, too, another thing I want to touch on is people in open world events often AFKing, or waiting for a tail to catch up. Like with trains, especially, you're running around, or you know, I don't know if you experienced it with the events that you were doing with things where you're hopping from one event to another and someone lags behind and is still in the old place, and it's like, do you sit there and wait for them or do you keep going?
No.
And yeah, when it's a really large group, you know, to an extent, you kind of just need to keep going. If you're in a smaller group where, you know, you're all established and playing together, sure, maybe try to wait. Obviously, if they're friends, yeah, like don't just be like, fuck you to your friend and not wait for them. But yeah, it's also pretty common. The larger the squad gets, the more a sense of anonymity the members of the squads are going to get. So you'll have more often people who just AFK, and they're not going to tell you they're going AFK. They just go AFK. Might join the squad and not even be sure they're going to do the content and sit around AFK for a while. And you know, it's up to you if you want to let people who are AFK just sit around in your squad for forever. I don't really care when I'm doing open world events. Yeah, it really is more like herding cats run, and also hey Humes. But it's okay to leave people behind the larger your squad gets, because it will inevitably happen. It's just something about the psychology of large groups.
The only question I have, and I asked this a commander one time. We were in a really large group and we were doing rifts, and he had like 4 people that were offline. And I asked him, I said, why don't you kick these people? Because little things irk me. I have OCD.
Yeah.
And he said he can't kick them. I can't remember the reason. He said because they could be doing this or that, or have a computer problem or something.
Yeah.
So he leaves them alone. Is that right to do? Just leave
Yeah,
them alone?
it's fair. In particular, if someone's offline for a long time, then it's probably safe to assume like they're just not online anymore. Some people do set their status to offline, and then there's just kind of no way to know. But I do also usually I'll give people some time. Like if someone's sitting offline in my squad for like more than 15 minutes and they haven't told me like, hey, please leave me in squad, like I'll be back in a little bit, then yeah, I might go ahead and boot them. if it's something that's bothering you. But I would say probably give them at least like 10 minutes in case it's a DC.
Okay.
Some few other tips about open world commanding. Now I'm just kind of going on to, I'm going to talk about commanding in open world and commanding in raids and strikes. A little bit about making calls and teaching content, and then that's basically what I've got planned for you guys. So for commanding an open world, something that is handy to do with your sub squad setup is to plop yourself in your own sub and lock it, and then let everybody else gather up in whatever your main sub is. The reason why this is really handy is because it becomes very clear to people, like, oh great, that's the commander, because they probably want to right click on you and say join in map instance, because often people will, they'll go to your map and they might be in a different instance, and then you see this huge block of people in the squad and you don't know if maybe somebody hasn't ported in there yet and you're going to get like ported to some random map or they're in the wrong instance. So it's very handy to have yourself just locked in a subgroup, for everyone's reference.
I didn't know you have to lock it.
You don't have to lock it. You could leave it unlocked, but then technically people can move themselves into your subgroup. I don't think that they necessarily are, but you can lock it if you want to be safe.
Okay.
Let's see here. Commander tags, I got a little blurb here. Commander tags are used in open world to lead events and help group people up to tackle events that can't be soloed, or to run farms of things. It's generally assumed that as the commander, you know what you're doing. I talked about the AFK part. Yeah, and I say keep in mind that the longer you spend not doing the activity you're tagged up to do, the higher chance there is of other people leaving who have been keeping up with you. Okay, so commanding in raids
and if you're going to leave the tag, try to tell them too.
Yes, yeah. Tell, thank everyone, and then be like, all right, in open world, be like, all right, that's it for me. Thank you all for coming, kind of thing. You can let other people tag up if they want. Okay, so for commanding 10-man content, I've got a few specific tips here. One is that knowing as much as you can about other classes and elite specs and the encounters, and everything, all of that's going to be really beneficial for setting up your raid squads. Like, for example, warrior gets a DPS boost as long as they have swiftness on them, I think. And that's something that I definitely would not have fucking guessed.
Okay, I'm gonna go.
Okay. Thanks for coming, Britt.
I don't need raids and strikes because I don't command that.
No worries. Yeah, I think the rest of the content is all kind of has to do with teaching things and making calls, which you're probably not going to be really doing in open world as much. So
right.
We'll feel better, Britt.
Thank you. Thank you for all the information. It was really helpful.
Yeah, sure thing.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Britt.
Bye.
Yes, so yeah, knowing stuff about specs will definitely be handy, because it will make it easier to make sure that your sub squads are set up optimally. Mirages, if they have, I believe it's the Chaos trait line. Well, Mirages, Mesmers in general, if they have the Chaos trait line, I believe they have to have regen on them. So you want to make sure they're in a squad where they're going to have good regen uptime. Just reading here what Ren's saying. Ren's saying here, I will say having people who know their specs like Zargle and Scar mention what subgroups to arrange based on things like which skills will interfere with which helps too, because I sure as heck don't know all of that. Yeah, so one thing, like, it can be really handy to have people who really know their class. Just in general, this is not a necessity as a endgame commander, but it's something that will make your job easier the more you know about other classes. Another thing has to do with the calls that you make. So when doing commands, you'll generally want to try to do them calmly. If you are someone who tends to get like very emotional in your voice and panicky, you might want to practice trying to calm that. If it's something that happens very frequently in your commanding, because the energy that you output to your squad as you're commanding is something that they're going to pick up. So if you've got like a very calm, like, here's our next mechanic kind of voice, that's going to rub off on them. They're going to be less stressed about the upcoming mechanic that they'll need to handle. Being aware as well of some of your language patterns. Like if you were to stream yourself commanding, it might be worth watching over a couple segments of it if you are really wanting to improve your commanding, that is. I'm not saying that everyone who commands has to go and rewatch and analyze their speech, but if it's something in particular that you are motivated that you want to look into, that is something that you can look at. You can, same thing, it's essentially like looking into improving public speaking, where you're watching back yourself speaking and then take notes of things that you find distracting. Positioning of ums sometimes, I mean, that's not really a big deal, but if you notice that it's really distracting, you might be something that you jot down in your brain to be like, maybe I'll reduce that a little bit, and it'll help with people being able to retain information better. Let's see. Whenever you wrap up a session, it's a good idea to wrap up, particularly if you're in a progging group or a group that is working on a hard piece of content. Wrap up with some positive feedback. Try to take note of some things that happened during the session that were particularly good, or even just moderately good. Just something that lets the squad know hey, yeah, you're doing good. You're doing all right. And then you can also bring in a little bit of, here's some things that we can grow on. So it's this idea of, awesome, keep it up. Now let's see what else we can keep improving. And that's usually a good way to approach those. If you're just having fun with your friends and fucking around, you don't really need to wrap up with that kind of formal thing. So it depends on how you're approaching in particular. The amount of calls that you're going to have to make is going to depend too on your group and what they need. Like I was just saying, if you're a bunch of friends fucking around, you already know the fight, you're not really going to be having to make a bunch of calls. If you're in a fight where people don't know it very well, you're probably going to be having to make a lot of calls about little things. Try to find nouns that are, just single word nouns that are going to describe a mechanic or something that people need to do, so that people can associate that single word with what they need to do. It also will make it easier to do calls, just be a single word call. I had a thought related to that, and then it just flew out of my brain. Okay, it was making calls, having a single word. The timing of calls. Yeah, pizza for Deimos. That's a good one. Pizza is pretty common call for the Deimos, like pizza where there's a bunch of slices all around him. When you're making calls, you want to give a little bit of lead time before you say it. So for example, if you're about to dodge something and you're like, okay, my timing for this is 1, 2, 3, dodge, you want to do 1, 2, 3. So let me do a clap with it. So it's 1, 2, 3, dodge. Instead, it would be, you would do the call for dodge as 1, 2, 3, dodge, if that makes sense. So a beat before, because you want to account for the latency in your voice coming over the voice comms, essentially. It's kind of small. It'll be something that you'll just have to get used to, and you will have to ask for feedback from people in your squad. But it can really help people with timing their dodges. Along with that, it can also really help to count down when people need to dodge or do a mechanic. Counting down or counting up. Counting down is usually a little bit easier because it's clearly going to end at 0. Whereas when you're counting up, who knows where it's going to end. Because doing that, as you're doing it as a cadence, then their bodies, they understand what the rhythm is for when the dodge call is going to happen because of the lead up, the 1, 2, 3. If you're running a prog group, it is worth specifically asking, hey, are there any mechanics people specifically want me to call out for? Or does anyone need like a refresher on this fight or on particular mechanics, that sort of thing? Okay, I mentioned all of those things. That's good. Which goes into my last point, which is about teaching content. It's hard to find a balance between giving a bunch of details, because as a commander, it's very helpful to know all of the details about how a fight works, versus let me give this person the minimum amount of information that they need to succeed at this fight. Some of that's going to depend on context. You might have someone who's generally competent at things but just hasn't seen the fight, and you're dragging them along, and everyone else in the group is experienced. Those, you can give them the barest minimum knowledge of the fight, and it'll be fine. The more people in the group that you have that are inexperienced with a fight or inexperienced with endgame content in general, the harder the encounter is going to be. And so usually the more calls are needed and the more structure is kind of needed as far as with teaching people positioning and giving them tips, specifically watching them if you notice one person in particular is struggling, or you can watch them during the fight and then try to give them some feedback that might help them out. Another thing too with framing feedback is try to frame it. Well, okay. First of all, let me start off with a very good piece of advice that my counselor gave me, actually, which was people really love consent. So you can approach someone with something like, hey, I have some ideas that might help you out if you're open to them. And that's right there, kind of, it's preparing. And that can be really good in particular for those of us who are, there's a lot of neurodivergent people in the gaming community. And a lot of people who are neurodivergent, at least coming from me personally with some ADHD tossed in there, surprise criticism cannot go well. It's not that I don't take criticism well. It's that surprise criticism, my ADHD immediately is like, we need to be defensive. And so if I'm just given a preface, my prefrontal cortex can override that and be prepared and then actually receive the feedback. So that's something to keep in mind when giving feedback to people. Also framing it as something like, hey, I really struggled with XYZ, and it helped me when I did this kind of thing. I just wanted to let you know in case that would help you. That frames it in a couple different ways of saying like, oh, I struggled with this too. Like, you're not doing bad. Everyone has to learn. And then giving some advice. You can also do the same kind of thing I mentioned earlier with wrapping up raids, which is that you give some feedback and slap in there some positive feedback too, of like, hey, you're doing good, keep it up. Try to dodge those AoEs a little bit more, kind of thing, or something like that. It just helps keep morale up a little bit. Granted, there are groups that absolutely you can just be very straightforward and concise with giving feedback, but these are sort of general tips for working with humans, I guess.
Always say what you liked before saying what you didn't like.
Yeah, it's usually a good way to start, yeah. Let's see, let me read over a couple of notes right here. Okay, I'm going to read a couple of other things I jotted down here. So teaching digestible chunks at a time is also a good way to approach content, in particular with people who are new to a fight. The longer the fight, certainly. So you might teach up just to the first phase. And then, things people might die, you wipe whatever, and then you come back and you teach the second chunk, and then you keep going. Another thing you can do is say a fight has kind of like some basics, like with Samurag, when I was teaching it yesterday, I kind of just go over like, jump the shockwaves, make sure you CC really hard, stack on the butt. And then basically when everything else comes up, as long as someone is good and receptive to calls, so I'm like, hey, during the split phase, go stack on circle. That could be it. That's all I give them. And then during the fight, I give a little bit of extra calls. Okay, DPS, Gold Helm, make sure you don't pull Rig'em, be careful of your pulls, kind of thing. You might want to try to balance that in your commanding when teaching people, because too much information only at the start is just it's gonna go away. Sometimes it's good to get a little bit in there, and then people have it kind of sitting in the recesses when they're reminded of it later. But it's good to kind of have a balance there of learning as you're seeing the mechanic for the visual learners and having some audio learning in there at the start. You can also simplify things, like saying, we don't want spirits to merge because that's bad, versus a more complex one, which is, we don't want spirits to merge because we'll create a bigger, stronger ad that corrupts boons. It could be a more extensive example than that, but you kind of get the idea. Shortening things, and then you can add detail later on. It's also highly not unusual, so highly usual, I guess, for people to honestly just completely forget something that you have said, and later on they eat that mechanic or something, and they're like, wait, how does that work? And you say literally exactly what you had just said earlier, and then it's like, oh, this is brand new information, they've never heard it before. Don't take it personally. It's just how learning works. A lot of people need to see stuff and experience stuff to then learn from it, and that's fine. I'm trying to think about, that's all I personally had written down for big tips. Trying to think about some other things, but I mean, really, that's the most that I can think of. Does anyone have any particular questions, or like have scenarios they want advice on or anything? Yes, it can take a bit for brains to retain info. Plus, with all the different learner types, honestly, I think most people learn best by experience, just because evolutionarily, that's kind of how shit works.
Healthy, spry, worldly. Why, you seem like someone with a nose for adventure.
Oh yeah, I don't think I explained the full mechanic of how Rig'em worked to you guys before. Yeah, my commanding style for teaching has changed over time, where I've tried to be shorter in the way that I command and more concise. It's, as someone, like, I really enjoy learning all of the details, but as I got some feedback from people, which is also another good thing to do, in particular if you're looking towards improving your commanding, is to put that feeler out there after you command, let's say with a group of friends or something like that, where you just say, if anyone has any feedback on my commanding, like, send me a DM or whatever. Because that's how I kind of like learned some feedback of, maybe you should make the explanations a little bit shorter. And so then I started making shorter ones where then I sprinkle in little bits of more detail later, even, like in the example of Ren, months later, or I think it's been over a year since you first seen Samurag, and now you know about how that push thing works, or why we have to push him in there. Does anyone have any other questions or scenarios or anything? I'll give it a minute here while I close out a couple of tabs in the background. Okay. In that case, that pretty much wraps everything up. Hopefully it went over some good content and was helpful. Hopefully it wasn't too much just rambling on. Feel free, as you can always DM me or anything if you have any other questions about Commander's tools or need refreshers or want advice. I'm always happy to help. So, yeah. Thanks for coming. Then I also have a PowerPoint that I made of this that I will copy the link to, and I'll post in our Discord when I do it. It's what I refer to for some of my notes. But oh, sorry, Eve. Now I'm just now seeing the chat over there. It's really annoying because the chat in the Discord voice channel thing, like it doesn't show like a little dot. I saw it when you pinged me, then it showed a little alert icon in there, but it didn't before. Let's see, 100% about surprise criticism. I love feedback times, but sometimes if it's unexpected and in the moment, my walls can go up. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and push to talk mid-fight is hard. Honestly, I leave comms open for me when I'm commanding, or really when I'm on voice at all. I have too many fucking buttons to be able to do push to talk. I did that when I was in Overwatch, when I didn't have as many buttons to press. Leading people who know more than you, that's fun. It's actually kind of nice. It's both makes me slightly nervous and is also kind of nice because you have backup. If you're like, I don't know what the fuck is going on, then you can ask them to be like, or you can be like, okay, I'm gonna explain something, and then at the end, like often what I'll do, like if Sargol or Scar or one of the other people who are big gamers are joining us for stuff, and I'll explain something, and then I'll maybe be like, if any of you like have something to add on, feel free to go ahead, kind of thing. It's kind of nice. But yes, also can be a little bit nervous because you're like, I want to impress them. Stand here and let people push Rig'em and then hit the big boy when told to. Yep, pretty much. That's how it works. Also, Renan is not a really beautiful PowerPoint, but it's an okay PowerPoint. It's an alright one. Okay, well, I think what I'm going to do then is I'm going to end stream here for the Commander class, so then I can export this video for the Commander class to YouTube. But you know what, I will keep streaming for a little bit because I haven't streamed in a while, and I'm about to go do strikes, so I'll stream while I do strikes. So I will see you in a hot moment. Those of you who are in my Twitch stream, I'm going to end this stream and then start a new one.